you could literally 3x the value of a property, in a matter of years. We're not talking like 10, 15, 20 years. We're talking, 3 to 5 years, you could 3x a property.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Strategy. I'm Christian, your channel host today, joined by Chris Kirkman. Chris, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're doing some great stuff and really happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you here. This is someone who got their start in multifamily. They're very versed in multifamily, but has made a bit of transition. There's a sister class to multifamily, which we call self-storage. We've had a couple self-storage people on here. We've had a lot of people in multifamily strategy actually go out and buy seller finance self-storage. I am a big fan of the asset class. I think that there is a little bit of a disease in the US where we need to keep our stuff, and I don't think it's going to get cured. So people will always have stuff, and as long as people need to hold on to their stuff, they will pay to store it somewhere.
Yep.
I think this is a business model that makes sense. I'm excited to have him on here. Chris, tell us a little bit about your start, like before the real estate, before multifamily, self-storage, what have you. What was your actual starting point? What was ground zero for Chris?
Yeah, so I was always entrepreneurial. I think what was my first business? I had a pressure washing business when I was in my teens. Worked for this landlord, had a bunch of properties, so I would pressure wash, the side of houses and stuff like that. So I did that. I started a skateboard company when I was 17. Just a bunch of little random businesses. I've owned a food truck, I've owned a roofing company, so I've owned a lot of these. But my W-2, my career, my college education was in design. So I started out as a graphic designer. That's what I went to college for. I was big into skateboarding, so started designing for the skateboard industry, action sports industry. I'm in Southern California, so there's, tons of that going on out here, surfing, skating, snowboarding, all that stuff. So we have that going on. So did that, got into web design, then got into user experience design, which kind of is the late, you kind of morph into that. Now it's called product design. So worked for a lot of big companies, did that stuff for about 20 years, still dabble with some of that, but only for real estate related things or my own stuff. It's actually helped me build my own websites and all that. So that's what I did for a long time, but I always had like my freelance gig going. So I always had my own side business. So, nights, weekends, I was designing stuff for clients. Like my first iPhone app I ever designed, that was for, a client. Sometimes I would stack, regular jobs on top of each other because, I believe in living 90 days per month. We could talk about that a little later. I want to come back to that. But anyway, yeah, so design career, but really wanted to get into real estate for a long time. I think when I was a kid, my best friend, we'd build tree houses and all sorts of stuff. He was super handy. Now he's a general contractor. I knew he was going to go into that field. So I'm like, I could do the business side and we'll flip houses. You do the work, I'll handle the business. We didn't end up teaming up, but like when I was little, I wanted to do that. So kind of circled back to that, maybe 20 years later, but, got into real estate after having a lot of other businesses. I just thought the barrier to entry was like really, really, it was hard. I'm like, I have to raise like $100,000 to buy a house. Like what is that? I already own my own house here. And we all know that SoCal houses, in Southern California, super expensive. Now like it's in my area, it's hard not to find a house under $1 million. It's like, how do people do it? So, things that, I just thought it was really expensive. So, and then ended up buying, saved up a lot of money, bought a single family. Used the BRRRR strategy on that. Basically took a basement, turned that into another bedroom and bathroom. So made a 2-bedroom, 1-bath into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, charged more rent, did a cash out refi, pulled that money out. So pretty much got the house for free. I'm actually going to sell that house right now. So yeah, going to do that. And then, bought a duplex, then got in triplexes and got into apartments. And I loved apartments. I was all about apartments for the longest time, but then, started falling in love with, what I saw was self-storage. And, what I like about storage is it's everywhere. It seems, these are like garages, right? So it's pretty simple. I had a self-storage unit when I was maybe in my mid-20s. I didn't have a place in my apartment to put my ocean kayaks, so I just stored them in this like 5x10 dinky little storage unit. So did that, And yeah, so I wanted to get into it, learned a lot about it. I joined AJ Osborne's mastermind. I'm still in it. I'm actually an ambassador for it right now. Love AJ, love that whole team. And yeah, just learned a ton of stuff, read a ton of books, all that. But wanted to really kind of get into storage. Ended up buying my first facility in Ohio. And I mean, really, what I love about storage is there's no kitchen fires, there's no toilets. So these are like I said, garages. So that's kind of how I got into all that. But I do love multifamily. I'm still looking at apartments. One of my business partners and I, we have offers out on multiple apartments now. So we're doing that. We're also creating a fund right now too that'll handle that. So um, yeah, I love apartments, but storage is great.
Awesome. Now, how far did you go in the apartment game? Like, how many units did you say you scaled to?
Um, I don't remember the exact unit count, but I mean, I just had like a couple buildings. Um, yeah, and then I had I would buy like a series of triplexes next to each other in like a neighborhood. I would do little things like that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's a great way to get started. And the method that you really fell on was the Burr method, right? You'd saved up, bought, pulled out capital, and then you just scaled that. How many years did that take you in the multifamily space to really get momentum?
Yeah. So the thing that I left out is I learned that you could use OPM, and when I got into that, and I got that from like Bigger Pockets. When I
Mhm.
learned that, it was a game changer. I'm like, wow, I don't have to use any of my money really. So learned how to capital raise, learned how to turn a good profit for investors, and then yeah, just started doing that. And then now I have to use little to none of my own cash for these deals.
And that's a fantastic way to run. Now, when you are actually managing equity for other people, this is a question I get a lot. So you're raising capital, you're doing these
Yeah.
deals. What do you find is the most important piece for raising capital? Like when people are investing in you or your deals, what are the key pieces that they want to hear during your capital presentation?
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, when you're raising capital, you need to be known. Like they need to like you. They need to trust you. You need that credibility. So you got to have that. You got to have that rapport with them. They gotta feel good about it. But it comes down to just having a well put together package, and that's where my design ability has come into play because I've been able um, to put together nice brochures, websites, all that stuff too, branding, all that. But it comes into the presentation and working out the numbers, the projections, and all that. Um, and with storage, there's a lot of scalability with that, and it's easy to build more. So I look for facilities with land to expand and all that. So even with apartments, you just got to put together a good package and show. I'm a value add investor. Like for
Mhm.
instance, I bought apartments where total gut job, renovated every unit, that sort of thing, common areas, all that stuff. So I love value add. So I took that strategy and I brought it into self storage and kind of showing that and how it's scalable and how the numbers can increase. Investors, they love that. It's some of them want returns right away, but those are more turnkey projects and those have lower returns. Whereas mine, you might be not getting any return for a little while, several months or even a year while you kind of get the property ready. But after that, it's going to cash flow a lot. And then, I mean, you could literally 3x the value of a property, in a matter of years. We're not talking like 10, 15, 20 years. We're talking, 3 to 5 years, you could 3x a property.
Now, you're in the same niche that I am as far as like value add multifamily is what I like doing. I like doing entry level value add multifamily, stack units, find places where I can either be a better manager or a better contractor than the prior owner, which usually isn't that hard to do.
Yeah.
What does that look like in self storage? Because when I'm thinking multifamily, I'm thinking, we're going through our tenant mix, we're going through, replacing appliances, we're raising rents where they need to be raised, we're upping quality of life. In a storage unit, what does it actually look like to find a value add opportunity in that niche?
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, no toilets. You're not renovating that. You're not putting new kitchens in. So the kind of value add is different. I mean, like I said, these are garages. We're talking paint. We're talking, doing small enhancements, that are cosmetic usually.
Mhm.
But what you could do is you could put a fence around the facility. You could put up a ton of security cameras. I mean, I put up 30 in one of mine. Just like you can just put up a ton, you add way more value just by doing that. So better security, you deploy better lighting, put up fences, put in automated gates, put in a good website that has online payments, auto pay, all these different bells and whistles that make it easier and better for the actual customer. So that added security, the ease of use, all that stuff increases the value. But in addition to that, you could pave certain areas or put gravel in, and then do some boat and RV parking there. So any spare land you have, it's like, wow, you just gained an area if for boat and RV parking. And in a lot of markets, that works really, really well. And then, what you do is you build more. And by building more, it adds a ton of value.
Now, when you're adding spaces to a lot, because I've run into this where cities have been resistant to this, what does the process actually look like? So you buy a mobile home park, and let's go all the way like early transaction in the due diligence phase. You're like, hey, I found some extra space on this. I think I can create some boat and RV parking spots. Is there a city by city basis where you have to get these approved? What is the process where before you close, hey, all of the value add that I want to do, I'm actually going to be able to pull off? What does that work? Is that a difficult process to learn? Tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make sure the place is even zoned for storage. I've underwritten properties where it's like, I look at it and like, you have storage here, but the city switched it. Like, it'll do that. But you gotta not just look at the zoning. You have to look, you have to do your due diligence and figure out like, will the city allow this? So there's ways of finding that out. But you definitely want to figure that out before you buy the property. Because if that's like a huge part of your strategy, you gotta understand if that's something you could do. But in addition to that, you got to look at the saturation of the market. That's a huge thing. So square footage per capita is how you measure it. And typically that's a 3-mile radius, but really rural areas, that's a 5-mile radius. I look for markets with at least 10,000 people within that radius. And the threshold is usually about 10 for me. No more than 10 square feet per capita, but ideally it's about 5. And if you're at 5, then you know that you could build a lot more. And just capitalize on the need in that market. So if you're buying the only facility that has land to expand, you're gonna just grab all the extra need for storage in that area. But you definitely have to check with the city. You got to look at the zoning. You got to make sure you could actually do this. You just got to look into a ton of stuff. And luckily, I have one of my partners, he's amazing at that. Really, has an engineering and construction background, so he's able to help with that. So I've kind of put together this dream team of folks that are able to really jump in different times to make it happen.
One thing I've really enjoyed about multifamily is when you do improvements, it's really easy to do the marketing through word of mouth and listing, because there's a million listing sites it gets pushed out to. And if you do a good job, when I buy a building, the first thing I do is I just get on any sort of basic maintenance thing that was deferred. Tenants know within the first week, oh, wow, my stoves are getting fixed. New ownership is actually going to be responsive, and that makes the whole rest of the project easier. With self-storage, I imagine it's a little bit harder to get the word out. When you spend the money on the 30 cameras and the paving, I imagine your technical skills with the web design and the marketing is actually a huge portion of the success. When you do the value add as a business owner, what are you doing to get the word out now? Like, you've purchased this, you've done the stuff. How do you actually bring in the new tenants and let them know, or I guess not tenants, but the new renters of the space? How do you let people know, hey, this is a new park, this is new management, security has been upped? How does that work, and how important is that to the success of a self-storage project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I typically like to buy facilities that are like right off of a major highway. And you gotta have a sign up, like a really good sign. So, if I'm buying a facility that doesn't have a good sign, I'll put a new sign in, but you got to factor that into the cost, because signs could be pretty expensive. So that's one of the things you do. But with the website, actually, there's a vendor called Storage Pug, and they do really good. They're able to make it so the website connects to your backend system for basically, renting and all that stuff. Like once you mark something as vacant, it automatically goes up to the website, stuff like that. But SEO plays a big role in this. And by having that, really dialed in on your website, that's gonna that's we usually rank at the top or toward the top. Just the people paying for ads are at the top, but the ones that are usually on top that are ads might not even be for that area or for something unrelated. So someone's going to go to Google and be like, self storage in such and such town, and that you're going to be at the top of that list. There might be other facilities that aren't even on that list a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
the thing is, like, I live in a very urban area, and we have the REITs here with like these giant, facilities, monster facilities are super nice, really well done. But, a lot of places aren't like that. You have, these mom and pops that own these places. They're really old school. They don't have these systems. So it's easy to come in and, have the best facility in the area, and rank. They
Yeah.
don't have websites maybe. And if they do, that you can't even rent on. It's like you got to call them, different things like that. So, it's really just using the web. You could put ads out even. That's actually something we're doing a little bit of. We just kicked a bunch of, terrible renters out, tenants that hadn't paid in a while. And some of these people are MIA. They're just like, it's cheaper than a dumping fee to just leave my junk there. So it's like, all right, haven't paid in a while, you're out of there. But anyway, yeah. So the web is great. So I mean, that's really all you really need. But it's easy to have like the best facility, And here's like a stat. I mean, if you take like the top five fast food joints, you got McDonald's, you got Chick-fil-A, like all these, Burger King, you take the top five, all their restaurants combined in the United States. If you
Hmm.
take those, there's actually more self-storage facilities. Now, I'm not talking, units of the facilities. I'm talking actual facilities. Cause like you can go to these small towns, there might be a couple storage facilities, but no McDonald's, So, and where I'm at, there's, fast food everywhere. So if you live in an urban area, you're used to being fast food on every corner, but some of these towns, like they just won't have anything like that. Um, but they'll have storage. Like everywhere there's storage, there's such a need for it. So you can go in an area that has a low square footage per capita, bunch of
Hmm.
mom and pops just owning these other facilities. You buy from a mom and pop that hasn't done really much with the facility. You come in, put a nice, fence in, a security gate, automate the heck out of it, and just run the place much better. Security, you're now appearing on top, on Google, big old sign off the road. You're looking really sharp, compared to these other ones. So, they're going to go to you. And, that's kind of how I like to buy.
And you're hitting on something that's been a theme through this entire podcast. Ever since I've run this, the feedback that I get from a lot of owners is you make the most money being a better operator than the last owner. And what we see consistently is that is not a hard thing to do.
Nope.
Generally speaking, in every single market, especially when you're talking, we're not talking like huge metros. We're talking, markets with reasonable population, 10,000 plus people. That still is pretty small. I've invested in a lot of places that have like 30, 40,000 people. These mid-sized towns, there's usually a lot of mom and pop operators. A lot of them also don't have high amounts of debt on their property. Oftentimes, they've owned them for a long time. So you have a lot of creative finance options on this type of stuff in these type of markets. And it is not a huge challenge to be a better operator than them because they've owned it for a long time. They don't need to make the same profit on it. It's made them plenty of money for what they've bought it. You come in, you optimize the systems, you bring things close to market rent, you have the highest quality, the best SEO, and you can come in and dominate these markets. I mean, this is a strategy that I see people do, and it seems to be the most effective strategy to multiply money. You come in and buy these misoperated properties at a price where they make sense on how they're performing, and then you make them perform a lot better, and they're just worth more. It's a fantastic model. It's a simple model, and it takes some skill. And if you're a good operator and you have a good deal finding strategy, you can do a ton of these. And this is a really successful strategy.
Yeah.
How are you finding your deals, by the
Yeah.
way?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're totally right about what you said. Easy to be a better operator. And I'd love to get into the systems and how you could
Mm,
do that and how you can get your expense ratios super low.
yeah.
But I'm finding my properties just sourcing them. I mean, I have a little bit of a background wholesaling.
Hmm.
Did a little bit of that mostly for single family, but the same stuff works for multifamily, and other commercial works for self storage too. So you're just basically building a list of, storage facilities using tools like PropStream. I'm actually an ambassador for PropStream. They're amazing. But there's other tools that have, even more commercial properties listed on them. So you do that, you skip trace the list. You're going to run into the same issues that you run into with single family, where you get a million phone numbers. You got to keep calling them to get the actual owner, and then you call the owner up. You build rapport with them. Once they know that you're able to talk shop, and you're not just you're trying to build that relationship. You're talking about the area a little bit. You just want to get into it. You don't just pitch them right away. Then usually you can kind of get through to them, and get them loosened up to talk about selling you. And they might not sell to you right away, but the thing is, like, if you are the person that they enjoyed talking to, they're going to remember you when they do want to sell. So they might come back to you a year from now, 2 years. But so that's one method. I mean, it's just typical cold calling. Actually, I have an AI cold caller that does decently for qualifying. We built this AI model that's able to. It sounds just like a real person. You guys could check it out on my social feed. I have some videos of it, but it's pretty incredible. So it can actually get through to people, ask the right questions. It can actually do transfers to some, or take down a time to call back. It could do like whatever I want it to, and it sounds amazing. So I'll do that, and then, because I mean, if you get like a list of a ton of numbers, you don't have time to necessarily go through it all. But I'll still cold call when I have time. So there's that. I also JV with a lot of folks too that are able to kind of do the same thing and source the properties. So there's that, and then brokers are great too. Brokers will do all the hard work for you, and they'll bring you deals. Of course, you're going to have to negotiate a bit, but you have to do that with really anything. So there's that, and then of course, stuff that's on the market officially it's gonna usually be a little bit more expensive, but and more competition. So I you could get deals off of that, but I try to stay away from that. So mostly it's brokers, other JVs that bring me properties, or just sourcing myself with my own team. The old wholesaling method, cold calling, and all that stuff. So do that, and yeah. And then the thing is, with these mom and pops, I mean, you mentioned like they might have so much equity, like owe nothing on it, and bought it decades ago. The thing is, they'll get this magic number in their head that they think it's worth, or they'll see a comp that went for a certain price, but it might be in better condition actually. So it's not quite a real comp. And they'll get this number in their head. They'll want like 2 million for a property when maybe it's worth like 1.2 or something like that for a small facility. So the thing is, debt's super expensive right now. And we see this in every sector where, debt's expensive. So the sellers, you got to be kind of desperate right now to be selling. But sellers, they want, prices from a couple of years ago. But buyers, I mean, they can't do that because debt's so expensive. Interest rates are way higher. So it's just this kind of clash where it's hard to meet at the right price. And that's why, I mean, there's less inventory on the market, but the inventory on the market, like, it's hard to negotiate that. So not as many deals are being done. But that's where the seller financing comes in, because if you could seller finance, you can get them the number that they want, but at a low interest rate. So the numbers actually work when you calculate it. But interest, like, it really eats into a lot of that cost. I mean, it's crazy, like, when you play with the calculator. But speaking of calculators, I actually created one. If you go to underwritingcalculator.com, I own that, and then you're able to utilize the calculator I put together, and you're able to underwrite deals in like a minute. And there's these big spreadsheets that are scary, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, the people that I mentor, they're like, how do I, like, what do I do? Like, I teach people how to underwrite. And you just got to simplify. Just put a few, main things in there and just see what pencils out. But it's pretty easy to come up with like an offer price, at least for an LOI. But you're able to quickly see like how crazy interest plays into everything. So seller financing is definitely the way to go. But you're not always able to get that, because people just want to get out, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Yeah.
Well, that's the simplicity of real estate, right? You have to win on price or terms, or both.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do have to get one or the other. And I've had people come to me where they're like, well, they're not willing to seller finance, but they want this price. I'm like, well, what you have there is no deal.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
not, You could buy anything with creative finance, but if
Yeah.
they're not willing to be creative and they want more than it's worth, you can't buy every property. Like not everyone can sell them, and
Yeah.
that's fine. You
But
move on. And you'd mentioned earlier when you were going through all the different ways that you could find deals. The first one you mentioned, relationships.
yep.
If you have a strong relationship personally with the seller, you met with other owners and you treat them as owners, not just sellers of property, your options to seller finance, I've found they're going to go through the roof.
Oh yeah.
People like to work with people who they like, know, and trust.
Yes.
If they're
Yes.
going to lend you money, which is what they're doing in seller financing, they're not getting all of their cash out. There's a certain level of trust that comes with that. And if you have a relationship, your odds of winning that deal and having even an ability to negotiate on terms, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, I love what you said there. And that is absolutely, especially in asset classes, I see so many self-storage facilities go on seller finance terms.
Yep.
It is a super common way to sell a small business, especially in today's interest rate environment.
Yeah.
They get it. Self-storage owners is not a foreign concept to really any of them. Like they do enough business to understand how seller financing works. You don't have to explain it. If it helps get your deal work, yeah, you can win on terms. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You mentioned something early, and I wanted to dive into this.
Sure.
You mentioned doing 90 days and 30.
Yeah, 90 days per month. And well, it kind of goes into my version of the 80-20 principle as well, which I'll explain. So the 80-20 principle is basically like 80% of the results come from 20% of the output. So it's like if you're 80% of results are as good or at least passable, as like the top players, anybody else, then it's like, okay, well, that's 20%. You could stack 5 20s to equal 100. So that means you could actually do like 5 times as much as normal people do. You got the 9 to 5ers that they're like, I'm confining what I can actually accomplish into this, this amount of hours. And that's like all I can do. They don't think they could do all that stuff. And this mindset came from when I was freelancing and taking on all this work, still when I had a W-2 or any of that stuff. Like I've always had like side stuff going, side businesses on top of freelancing and just doing all this stuff. And I realized that you could just stack stuff. You could even stack W-2s if you wanted to, remotely. There's like all sorts of stuff you could do. So it's like, you could do 5 things. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be work related. It could be, that 20% could be allocated to, your kids, coaching your kids team or, traveling more or whatever. But you could basically take 20% of your energy and throw it into a bunch of different things. And it's just, I like saying live in 90 days per month because like, I kind of split my days up into 3 different chunks. I get so much, I wake up at 5 a.m. It's non-negotiable every day. I get a lot done before anybody else is pretty much awake, almost like a whole work day's worth of work. Then I got the middle chunk of the day, and then I got the last chunk of the day, which sometimes bleeds into the evening and even after the kids are to bed, but able to get, like 3 work days worth of, time in. But I'm still doing stacking, 5 of those 20%, doing a bunch of things. That's why I could do all these different businesses. And I've had business partners that are like, oh my gosh, you're just like everywhere. You're, how are you doing? They get very overwhelmed, but the ones that I stick with are the ones that, have that same mindset. And they don't get too overwhelmed. It's like, I could do a podcast. I could have a self-storage business. I could have a capital company. I could have a wholesaling company. I could do apartments. I could do a fund. I could do courses. I could do coaching, like all these different things, in addition to being a father of 2 wonderful children and a husband to a wonderful wife and a dog dad of 2 Siberian Huskies too. There's just
Wow, that's a dog that needs some attention.
It is, yeah. We don't walk them; they walk us. Let's put it that way. So, but anyway, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but that's just how I'm kind of built, and it's, anybody could do it. But you do get overwhelmed on occasion. But the thing is, just having that mindset of like you could accomplish so much more, you could do so much more with your day. And part of that is being able to delegate to people. I use virtual assistants. And VAs, they're great. They make life easier. You don't have time to underwrite a bunch of deals. You train a VA to do it. They could underwrite the stack of properties coming your way. My first VA I hired was doing that for me for apartments. Like I felt bad because all these great brokers were sending me all these deals, and I just wasn't getting to them in time. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm damaging these relationships because they keep sending me stuff and they're like, hey, did you look at that property? It's like, I sent you 5 last week. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible because I was in so many different markets looking at all these different properties. So all these brokers were sent. So I hired a VA, trained her how to underwrite a little bit. So she would do that plus do like 3 scenarios to find a price that made sense. And then, I would take a look at the good ones. Basically, she'd bring it to my attention, and then those are the ones I'd respond to the broker about. But like a lot of that just took time, to underwrite those deals, and um, the they would handle that for me. And going into back into the VA thing, they could do cold calling for you. They could do, I did that with my wholesaling. They could handle pretty much anything. Um, and for my storage facilities, VAs play a huge role in it because I don't have to hire, basically people in the U.S. to take incoming and outgoing calls. All my customers could be called from VAs for what, and they could also take calls to the facility. And the cool thing is I have a management company, so one VA could handle multiple facilities, just different numbers coming in. They know based on the number like which facility is calling. So it's like my expense ratio I could get down to like 15%, depending on property taxes in the area, where like expense ratios like 30 or 40%, kind of common, and of course with apartments even greater than that on occasion. But yeah, VAs are great, and just you could do so much more if you delegate and just hire people. Like another thing is, I I don't mow my own lawn because it's not beneath me to do that. I actually it'd be a lot of fun, but the thing is, like, I know somebody else could do it better than me. Plus, I'm not going to take that time to do that. I could use that time to spend with my kids. And the person mowing my lawn is going to do all the houses in my neighborhood. I mean, they got the block covered, so it's their business. They're efficient at doing that. Whereas me, to take all that stuff out, I'm not going to do as good of a job. I got to take time away from my family or take time away from work or whatever. The same thing goes with other stuff. And I don't frown upon people that order a lot of food in when they just don't have time to cook, or they're using the time that they would use to cook to spend with their family. Like if they're using that time wisely, then it makes sense to hire that out. So do that with like anything you could do that's taking time. And I make this board that has a list of stuff that's just like getting in the way of me getting other stuff done, like stuff I need to delegate. And that helps me stay focused at growing my businesses and focused on stuff that I need to focus on, and then just having other people that I work with take on certain tasks, and it just frees up a ton of time.
Yeah. No, I love that. And efficiency is the biggest thing, especially for someone who runs multiple companies. I did a similar thing with the property management company, with the education companies, with the sales company. I made the mistake of buying a resort, thinking that I want to be in hospitality, which I absolutely hate running.
Mm.
That is hard to run efficiently unless you get a big enough resort. I got like a $4.5 million purchase, 20 cabins with hot tubs. It's super cool, very unique piece of real estate. Just turned 90 years old,
Wow.
the resort. And it is the bane of my existence. Even though it makes money, it is so much time. And it's too small to add enough systems to truly optimize it. You can make it semi-passive, but you don't have enough people. So someone leaves, too much of the knowledge leaves with them. You got to get involved to train the next person. You need to build a business that is scalable. We started building a business that we're like, oh, we have no interest in scaling this, and it's too small to be self-sustaining. You've done a good job going from multifamily to finding, hey, the way I operate, I actually have even more efficiencies in self-storage. You understood what your business is, and you built systems around that. Everything you just described to me builds directly. It's a plug-in to the business that you're building. They build on each other and they synergize. That is the mark of a skilled entrepreneur. You understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and when you do a new venture, it's focused on building the things that you already have in place. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you, which is, for anyone listening, this is how you play the game. That is exactly how you play the game. Get traction on something and then add systems and add processes and at times add businesses that all complement each other and build a bigger engine. You're doing phenomenal advice. In your career, this will be the final question. In your career, we have something that we call the stupid tax. When you're new and you haven't done it before, it's more expensive the first time you do it. This entire podcast is dedicated to talking to other owners and doing the owner meeting for people. And especially if you're busy or in your workday, you're listening to the pod. I want you to learn from the most expensive mistakes we all make. So, Chris, what is your highest stupid tax been so far in the learning process of running real estate?
I got a good one.
Good.
Yeah. So I talk about this in my, I'm putting a course out on partnerships, and also we're going to touch on what you just talked about with systems and all that stuff too. But what I learned from partnerships is you gotta double check stuff. You can't just take someone's word for it, especially when it comes to like big rehab stuff. I was a big rehab job that we were doing on some apartments. I took someone's word for how long it's going to take and how it's going to go. Here's the plan. They were experienced in rehabbing, experienced in doing construction, stuff like that. So I figured, okay, well, we're good. I'll believe them. I'll believe the duration. I'll believe the numbers, how much cash we're going to need, what we have to raise, what we have to borrow. And we had the opportunity to borrow, about $300,000 or $400,000 that we needed. And then, I asked him like this $100,000 we're borrowing seems a little light. Are you sure that this is like all we need? Are you sure? Like I asked him, 3 times, like, oh, like, man, this doesn't look right. And he laughingly was saying, oh, this is more than we're going to need, more than ever. And then, ended up having to shell out like around $200,000 of my own cash. That's a lot of cash to put out, and it could set you back quite a bit by having to shell out. I mean, who wants to just throw $200,000 into something that they didn't think they had to? So I had to do that. So the thing is, I didn't want to do a capital call because I take good care of my investors, and it wasn't in the business plan for them to have to do that. So we could have borrowed it from the person we borrowed the $100,000 from easily, but I had to just randomly start putting my own cash into it, and it's like, wow, I can't believe I did that. But, the thing is, like, lessons are learned. We go to college, we spend money on college degrees, and we also spend money on our stupid tax stuff, right? So it's like mistakes sometimes are okay with me because you don't have to pay money because I learn a lesson, but I went to college and I paid for that college degree, right? So I'm doing the same with being new at stuff. Like, I'll make a mistake, it's going to cost me, but it's like, you know what? Like, I could have gone to real estate school or like somewhere to learn this, right? Or paid, an expensive course or mastermind to learn about this. But, that would have still cost me money anyway. So you need to pay money to learn usually, or you just listen to great podcasts like this and you could learn quite a bit, especially with the stupid taxes. But anyway, that was a really big one. And you could end up having to shell out a lot of your own money just by not doing the due diligence. I should have sat down and be like, hey, let's look at this here. Okay, the duration, how is this 100,000? Okay, what's this going to cost? What's the holding cost? How are we managing this? We're going to have vacancies. How's that going to look? Are we only going to kick out? Are we going to do it in waves or like kick everybody out at once? Like, what is this going to look like? Like, what's this going to cost? Let's do projections. Let's make a spreadsheet and calculate this. And that's what I do with my storage projects and everything moving forward. You got to highly calculate everything. I'll do, when I'm buying a property, I'll do a 3-year, month over month. So 36-month projection of like what the numbers are going to look like, and when we're going to lease things up, the rehab costs, all that stuff. So, you just got to really do your due diligence and double check stuff. How, if you're partnering with someone, they might be good at doing something and better than you, but sit down with them and have, show me your work, basically, prove it to me.
Exactly. And that can be massively helpful. And I have had over $1 million of checks that I've written to partners to either get rid of them on projects where they're not doing their job, or to where they've been delegated to do a certain part of the job and they just didn't do it. And it ended up costing, I think last time I looked at it, I think I have written, and granted, these are all on properties that did make money, but I have had about $1,175,000 in checks that I didn't expect to have to write.
And that's a pretty set number. Do you know the cents attached to that too? So
no, it was an exact dollar amount. So that was the exact dollar amount. We did all the buyouts in round numbers. But to either eliminate proper partners or to have to, I've only once had to go to a mediation where we were blatantly right, but we had a partner that wanted to be reimbursed for every month of vacancy that we had during renovation directly from us.
Wow.
Uh, because we still don't get the because it was a 4-hour mediation where I never did get the answer of why we thought that was going to be a thing, but you have all sorts of things that come up, and to your point, the most expensive thing for me has not been the debt, it has not been the properties, it has not been the unexpected surprise with the building. It's always been the people are typically your largest variable. I mean, I suppose if you were syndicating back in the day and you got all variable rate debt, that that might have been a pretty big variable. I got a friend whose debt cost went up about 280 a month
Wow.
from his variable rate debt. But generally speaking, people are the biggest variable in your business. And if you do a good job, you need to understand each aspect. You don't need to be an A player in every aspect of your business, but you need to have a solid understanding of every piece so that you can check people's work, so that you have to have someone in the driver's seat. And if you are the head of your company, that's you. And if you take that ownership early, your stupid tax can be a lot lower.
Yeah.
Chris paid a lot of money. I've paid a lot of money to learn that lesson. If you can learn it from this podcast, that could save you a ton of pain.
Yeah.
Chris, you have a course and you mentor people on how to do this. Where would someone find you if they want to learn more about self-storage, more about partnership, more about real estate acquisition? If they want to learn from you, where would they connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. You could just find me, Chris Kirkman, on there. But you could find me at chriskirkman.com. I have like a link to a lot of my different businesses. But all my educational stuff is at statingitreal.com. It's, stating it real. It's kind of a play on words like real estate. Get it? Anyway.
I was going to say, that is a very clever one. Well done picking up that website. That's good IP.
Yeah. So podcast is named after that's coming out. We're putting together, but I'm releasing it. By the time this podcast is out, I'll probably have my, really good, it's a super robust course. It started out just being about partnerships and forming LLCs and companies, but it evolved into this like all encompassing course on just like how to get started, how to scale, how to grow, how to buy properties, how to efficiently manage them, and then how to exit basically. And, it tells you how to form a company and where to go for that, and different entity structures and different, different key terminology with you turn into this, like, I'm probably like 70 videos into it. It's like crazy. So this huge thing. So yeah, have that out, and then good community on there too. But yeah, just check it out. And would love to connect with a lot of folks, and I'm always open to chat. So hit me up on social. Would love to talk about self-storage or multifamily or really anything. Out-of-state investing is another topic I love talking about too.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for joining today. If you guys want to learn more from him, go ahead and follow the links. They'll be in the show notes here to check out his Instagram, his socials, his website. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today, and everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode.